Hey guys, welcome back to another garden tour. I'm Rachel, this is Auxhart Gardening, and every week I give you guys a garden tour on Wednesdays to not only update you on the progress of my plants, but also to give you guys a consistent progress report on how a real garden is going. Not just the highlight reel, everything that's going on, all the issues, and all the things that I'm doing to fix the issues. For those of you who are new, I am in South Carolina. This is the upstate zone 7B, and right now it is 85 degrees outside at 6:30 in the evening. So we are getting into the full summer weather here, and I have been planting lots of stuff in the garden. There's still a lot of stuff that needs to be planted. I know this is like the third week in a row that I've said that, but I'm very busy and there's a lot of garden to fill up. So as we do every week, I'm going to start over here by this big trellis. This is where I have onions and fava beans planted. You can see the onions have been bulbing up quite nicely. This isn't even the biggest one. And the fava beans are getting to the end of their life. A lot of these plants that look kind of unhappy with the heat, I could probably go ahead and pull out anytime. I just need to have the time is the thing. And so fava beans mostly finishing up. You can see some of them have huge pods on them that I am waiting to dry out so that I can have dried beans from these. But most of these plants actually are not setting flowers anymore. They are still making flowers, but they are not setting beans. Whoa, I just noticed this. This is maybe one of the fatter pods that I have from the fava beans. This is starting to look like it is getting ready to harvest for dried beans. Not quite there yet though, because it's still got some green on it. But yeah, I think this color change is what I'm looking for. I've been letting my spinach go to seed, and I never really saw big flowers on it, but I'm noticing little seed pods along the stem. So I suppose the flowers are just really teeny tiny. But these definitely look like seed pods coming in along the stem. So that's pretty neat. This will be my first time saving seeds from spinach. I think this mint plant here at the beginning of the row is going to start probably doubling in size every time you see it. It's about to get huge, and that's kind of the point. Some of you have pointed out that planting mint in the ground is risky, and to that I would like to say yes. I know. Mint is one of those plants that it'll grow its roots down, and then it'll go out and under and then come back up somewhere else and be a whole new plant. And if you don't contain its roots in a pot, then you could have it spreading everywhere. And that's actually kind of what I want to happen. I know that at some point I'm going to have to start controlling it, but I would really love to see it start filling in this area around the path here as sort of like a living mulch in this area. And similar with this thyme plant that's right here, this is not quite as vigorous as the mint, but I'm sure it will be at some point. It's maybe competing a little harder with the grass over there. Alright, so moving on to the next row. This one cabbage I had left got completely eaten clean by the groundhog. And interestingly, little tiny buds are coming up in here that look like the teeniest, tiniest little cabbages. And I had not intended on leaving this in place. I just didn't have time to, oh hello Kata. I just didn't have time to pull it out. And I think it's really interesting to see what's happening to the plant as it's trying to recover from the damage that it had. Right here at the front of this row, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 basil plants. They are teeny tiny little transplants that I started indoors, and something is obviously chewing on them, so we'll see if they survive. But I have some spares that I can kind of put in their place if these ones die. And I have basil spread all throughout the garden. This one's looking alright. I have basil spread all throughout the garden, so hopefully I will have some surviving basil plants and get a good harvest. And then these onions are the big ones. I mean, look at that. That's like a commercial sized onion right there. I'm pretty happy with some of these onions. And they are interplanted here with peppers. I've put these cages around the peppers for branch support because a lot of these are going to make some really big peppers later in the season, and I wanted to go ahead and get these cages in before the leaves and everything got so big. But the first flush is probably already coming on. Yeah, I see one of my first pepper flowers coming in. Here's another one. And so peppers, if you didn't know, if you pull all the fruit off of them before the seeds are mature, they will sort of freak out and be like, oh no, I didn't reproduce, because that's all they want to do is reproduce. And they will grow new branches and then try and fruit again. And so every time that you pull all the fruit off of a plant like that, it gets bigger and makes more fruit. So with peppers, I like to go ahead and let them fruit early once I've transplanted them, not before I've transplanted, but once I've transplanted them, pull that fruit and then let it grow up again and get a good second flush midway through the summer. Pull all of that, and then by the time the third flush is coming in, which is usually near the end of harvest season, around in the fall, then that is usually the big harvest when I'm saving my hot peppers for storage, and I haven't actually had sweet peppers to save for storage, but usually that is when the plants are huge and producing more than I can eat. And down the other half of this row is garlic in the ground. This is the giant garlic that I've been growing. I didn't realize it was going to be this big, but this is Dixon Softneck from the Experimental Farm Network, and I'm not sure if they're going to sell it again this next year, but I've been pretty impressed with it. Something interesting I've noticed is that this garlic is growing new stems from in between leaves, which I've never really seen before. That's quite unusual, and I'm not really sure what to make of that, but I guess when we harvest the bulbs, we'll kind of be able to see more what's going on with that. I have harvested almost all of my lettuce now because, as you can see, everything that's left is bolting. This was eaten down by the groundhog as well, but it was healthy enough to go ahead and start trying to flower, and so I decided I would leave it until I absolutely needed this space for something else. Alright, and backing up to the front again, this is a kale plant that is still going, still gorgeous, making leaves so big. It is like one leaf per meal for me. And it's still tasting pretty good too. It hasn't tried going to seed yet, so I'm going to let it play out its course and hopefully save some seeds from it because it seems to be a pretty cool plant. Back behind it are my peas, and I have a bunch of different kinds of peas here. On this side of the trellis are some of these purple ones, which are either sugar magnolia or tendril magnolia. I can't remember. There were two magnolia types. And I'm currently letting these go to seed as well so that I can save some for next year, because as you can kind of tell, the plants are struggling in the heat. They're pretty unhappy. And just this morning, right in here, I planted some cucumber seeds, and so those will be coming up in a few days, and at that point these seeds, at least some of them, should be ready and I can go ahead and tear these plants out. On this second trellis here, the peas are looking a little more dead, and also right in here I have planted noodle beans, and these are also going to come up in a few days, and they're probably going to grow quite vigorously and quickly. Oh wait, that might be my first noodle bean coming up right there actually. So I guess they're coming up now. Last year I had my noodle beans on that trellis, the front one, and I'm putting them on the back one this season because I have this plan for this front trellis to have winter squash on it, like little tiny ones, like little baby pumpkins hanging down from it, kind of cute like ornaments. And so the plan is, in my area, I have had squash vine borers as a problem, and I've been thinking about what am I going to do about this. And there's some methods that I've seen and different ways to deter them. And so what I've done is I've planted cucumbers on this trellis, and I don't care too much about having a lot of cucumbers. And so if there are squash vine borers, I think they'll be attracted to the cucumbers because that's the only squash that I'm planting right now. And then I'm going to plant out my winter squash onto this trellis in like mid-July or so, and that should be after the life cycle of the vine borers is past the point where they would be looking for vines to bore into. And I have that luxury because I live somewhere where the season is quite long enough for me to go ahead and start the winter squash a little bit later and still get them harvested on time. So that is the plan with that. I think I might plant, well, I said cucumbers are the only squash, but I might plant a couple of bushing squash out in extra places in the garden, just to kind of see what happens. I also don't care a super lot about stuff like zucchini, so if they get killed, that's not a big problem. The thing I really want to protect are my little pumpkins. That is really the squash that I want to have. I think I showed you guys last week that Kata is always underfoot while I'm in the garden. She just plops herself right down next to wherever I am. Okay, so coming back over to where the noodle beans were, I wanted to show you guys these peas. I think I got a genetic variation where they variegated a little bit. And I think that that is really pretty, so I am definitely going to make sure to save these seeds and save them separately, and see if I can get the plant to repeat this next year. Oh look, it's a ladybug. I'm pretty sure it's a true ladybug too, and not one of those lookalikes. Alright, so behind the trellises are all of the turnips gone to seed. What are these? They're beets. Beets going to seed. You can see the size of the roots on some of these beets. I did try one and it still tasted like dirt to me, even though these are supposed to be sugar beets, albino sugar beets. So I'm not sure if I'm ever going to grow beets again, but I do want to watch them go to seed because I think that that is very interesting and good to know, and certainly good for all of the insects in the garden right now. And speaking of flowers, my purple potatoes have started to flower. This was open, I think, earlier today. These are so gorgeous with just the little bit of the purple tint on the leaves. And these will be ready to harvest not too long from now. We've maybe only got a few more weeks on these. Potatoes are generally ready to harvest after they flower and then die back a little bit. So there's one more row left in the garden, and that is where my other garlic is and my flowering Brussels sprouts. And additionally, mixed in are a few flowering radishes. And I wanted to show you guys these pods and just the difference in size between this and a turnip pod. It's like, I don't know, 2 or 3 times as fat, maybe a little shorter. But these, if you didn't know, they're actually edible. There's Kata sitting on my plants. So radish pods are quite edible. They're crunchy. They've got a little bit of that radish spice to it, but it's toned down from what an actual fresh radish is. And if you have radishes that have gone to seed, you know that they will jungle out and make like hundreds of these little things. So they can be really fun to harvest for salads or stir fry. Last year, or maybe 2 years ago now, I pickled them and they turned out really neat. This spot at the front is kind of her favorite spot to sit. So if you ever wonder why the plants up here look a little more squished than everybody else, that's why. But if we come up over here, we can see, let's see, this one is not making very many pods actually. There's a couple, so it's not like it's a sterile plant, but it's definitely not making very many. Whereas one like this, you can see a lot more pods on it. And I'm not really sure why that is, but they should be the same variety. And it is still in the process of making more pods. I've still got peppers here interplanted, and then also in here are some zinnias. I think these have like doubled in height since you guys saw them. They are recovering fine. They were a little eaten up at the bottom after they got transplanted, but zinnias, they grow pretty fast and bounce back from that sort of thing pretty fast. And here along the back row, I actually planted some sunflowers, and you can see these are actually volunteers from last year. This one's getting to be quite large already. So that's nice to have. It's planted itself in the exact correct spot. I have another volunteer over here. And I do not see these coming up just yet, but they were planted on the same day as the beans, so it should be pretty soon now that they start sprouting up. Alright, so let's take a quick peek at this raised bed. I think the cilantro are stealing the show. I definitely am starting to see little baby coriander seeds coming in, so that's pretty neat. And down below it, my lavender is actually starting to flower, and that is really exciting. I grew this lavender from seed, and it has taken it over a year to get to be this size. Both of the new herbs that I planted have survived. This is fenugreek and Mexican tarragon back here. And I think now that the stevia is getting to be this size, it'll probably, again, like start doubling in size every week as we get into the warmer parts of the summer. I actually saw that they are selling stevia started at the store now, which is really neat and interesting. So if you get yourself some and you want to know how to make stevia extract, I do have a whole video on that. I can point to it up here, and you can go figure out how to make stevia extract at home from the leaves. Oh, these ones are even farther along. Look at those. Those are going to be really, really nice coriander seeds. I'm going to have a lot of them too. Oh my goodness, every little flower is a little seed. And lastly, all I will really say about the berry patch is that it looks basically exactly the same as it has every week. These plants are taking a while to take off, and I'm not sure how normal that is because this is my first time growing berry bushes. My strawberry is looking quite healthy. It's been putting off runners here, and so hopefully it will start spreading out, but this is a June bearer, so I'm not expecting to see flowers on it for at least another month. The idea is for eventually there to be strawberries kind of covering the whole area like a living mulch that is edible. I don't know how realistic that is, but I'm trying it and you guys get to watch and find out. So up here on my porch are some of the plants I still have to deal with. These are all my extra basil starts. I have cinnamon basil here. This is Emily basil, lettuce leaf basil, lemon basil. And these little baby ones are actually lime basil. They haven't gotten any bigger than that. I found that the lime basil is actually really not very vigorous, especially compared to the lemon basil. And especially not compared to the cinnamon basil, which grows like a weed. And then the purple basil is like somewhere in between right there. We've got leftover peppers because I had extras, and these are the ones that looked kind of sad. Same with the eggplants, although if my ones out in the garden get eaten, these are great backups. And these are all of my tomatoes. This is my second round of tomatoes, and you can see they look fine. They look perfectly fine. My first round of tomatoes that I planted exactly the same way, all just up and died. They just all up and died, and I have no idea why. And this is the second year in a row that that has happened to me. So like, I must be doing something wrong, but I really can't figure out what it is because obviously these are doing fine. So it wasn't my seeds because I planted from the same seed packet. It wasn't my dirt because I used the same dirt. It wasn't where I was keeping them because I kept them in the same spot. So all I can think is maybe it was like watering or maybe the temperature in the room. But all the peppers did fine in that room. And peppers tend to like it hotter than tomatoes. So it really just kind of feels like a freak accident. And I highlight this to you because two things. These are late tomatoes. A lot of people in this area will have put their tomatoes in almost a month ago now. And I have not put mine in yet. And these are about the right size for transplant at this point. They're looking healthy. And if I let them get much bigger, they will start to look unhealthy in this area. And so I will show you throughout the season that having them be a month late is not a big deal in terms of how much harvest I'm going to get from these. But also, as I always say, like if something like this happens to you and you are a new gardener, you don't have very much experience, you will often think that, no, you're a bad gardener, you've got a black thumb. And I get so upset for people who are thinking that about themselves because they don't have any other experiences to see that, oh, you can grow this stuff even after things die, and you're not a bad gardener, you just had an unlucky situation or you made a mistake. And that is why I show you guys these tomatoes, because I did do something wrong. I don't know what it is. I'm an experienced gardener and I still killed a lot of plants. So I guess through all this rambling, I want you to take hope. If you kill something, it's okay. Just try again. Alrighty guys, well that is it from me today. Remember, every Wednesday I put out a garden tour. My name is Rachel, and until next time, I wish you all happy gardening.